I got a call to remove a colony of bees from this backyard compost bin, and here's how I did it. First, I started to carefully remove the comb structure of the hive. I fit the pieces of comb that had baby bees and the bees' food into wooden frames. Next, it was time to start scooping bees into the new hive. I always wear protective equipment when I need to, but since I work with bees almost every day, I've learned to read their behavior and could tell that these bees, like most honeybees, were very gentle and would not try to sting me. So I kept removing comb and removing bees from the bin, all while looking for the queen bee. After I removed most of the bees, I saw the queen crawling up the side of the bin, so I put her in a clip to keep her safe. She's the largest bee in the colony, which makes her a little easier to find. There she is. I put the queen in the new hive and all the other bees started to follow her in. I had to get a bigger hive because there were so many bees, but after most of them went in the hive, I closed it up and carried it back to my truck, and it was another great day of saving the bees. Bees had been living in this backyard shed for at least 2 years. The landlord wanted to call an exterminator, but the family who lived here wanted to save the bees, so they called me. When I lifted up the floor, I found a huge hive full of gentle bees. The hive was so big I had to remove another section of floor to access the entire thing. Then I started removing the hive. Whatever I removed from the original hive went right into the new one so the bees would have everything they need to survive. After I removed all of the comb, I started scooping bees into the new hive. As soon as I put the bees by the new hive, they marched right in. Then a stream of bees began running out from under the floor into the new hive. So I waited and watched to see if I could spot the queen bee in the crowd. After about 15 minutes, she appeared, so I put her in a clip to keep her safe. Once the queen was in the new hive, some bees began sending signals to help the other bees find their way home. I left the hive overnight, and by the next day, the entire colony was in their new home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. I woke up one morning and my truck was covered with more bees than usual, so I ran outside in my pajamas to see what was going on. A swarm of bees that I caught the night before was leaving their hive and swarming again. I tried to offer their new hive back to them, but they weren't moving in very quickly, which told me that they wanted to go somewhere else. It was a race between me and the bees. I had to find the queen before the bees found a place to fly off to. After a few minutes, I found her. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, but before I could put her in the new hive, I had bees swarming to her in my hand. As soon as I put the queen in the hive, the bees began to go right in. I still had some bees on my hand who weren't leaving because they could still smell their queen on me. So I shook them off so they could find her. Within minutes, the entire colony was rushing to get back into their new hive. You can see how fast they were moving and how the queen was covered in bees. I waited for all the bees to get into their hive, and it was another great day of saving the bees in my pajamas. There was a big beehive under the floor of this shed. But as soon as I started to remove the hive, most of the bees moved to the outside wall, so I started to scoop the bees into the new hive with my hands. As a professional beekeeper, I've learned how to read the bees' behavior, and I could tell that these bees were calm and did not want to sting me. They just wanted to get into their new hive. So I kept scooping bees off the wall while looking for the queen bee. When the bees are gentle, I prefer to wear as little protective gear as possible. The less gear I'm wearing, the more dexterity and agility I have. After scooping most of the bees off the wall, I didn't see any signs of the queen. So I went back in the shed to look for her, and there she was, surrounded by her attendant bees. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, and as soon as I put the queen in the new hive, all of the other bees followed her pheromones and went into the new hive on their own. I waited for all the bees to get into their new home, then I closed up the hive, and it was another great day of saving the bees. A swarm of bees that needed a new place to live settled under this table, and I was called to remove them. So I gave the bees a new hive and I started to move them in. When these bees left their old hive, they took their queen and as much food as their stomachs could hold, but they left everything else behind. That meant that there was no honeycomb, food, or baby bees here, and I could just scoop these bees up with my hands. These bees were very gentle, mostly because they didn't have a hive to protect, but they should have had a queen. So with every handful of bees I scooped, I was searching for the queen. It wasn't too long before I found her hiding under the table, so I put her in a clip to keep her safe and I put her in the new hive. I needed to get all of the bees into the new hive as quickly as possible so they wouldn't try to swarm again. So I just kept scooping handful after handful of bees into the hive. But there were still a lot of bees on the picnic table who didn't seem to know where to go. So I gave them a little bit of smoke to help them move along. The smoke does not harm the bees, they just move away from it like we do. So I used my smoker to herd the colony into the new hive. Then all of a sudden, some of the bees started to recognize the hive as their new home. They began sending signals to the other bees to tell them where to go. And all of the bees started to march down the leg of the table and into the new hive. I waited while the bees moved into their new hive, then I closed it up, I loaded it into my truck, and it was another great day of saving the bees.